Hey, what's up, everybody? So today I wanted to talk about some advice I got from an agent during my days of querying. So I put out my self-published book, and then I was like, I want to try querying because I thought I didn't really have the correct what's the word for it, like process or events of order in my head, and I just thought that hey, maybe if I self-publish, then I can get an agent. And the truth is, you can't.
Well, that just about wraps it up, fellas.
Not unless you have amazing sales. And if you don't, then they're going to be like, well, you've already self-published this. It didn't sell much. So why would we pick you up and represent you to big publishers? Like, sorry, we're not going to take that. And it's not a crazy or unrealistic idea on their part. Like, why would a publisher pick up a book that's already out there? It's already been self-published. It has your name attached to it, and then suddenly decide to represent it, try and sell it, and put it in bookstores. Like, clearly it hasn't done well on its own. Key element in all of that is, well, did you market it, right? Because you could be, sales don't, I want to be very clear on this. Sales do not reflect your aptitude or skill as a writer. They just don't. We've all read books on the shelf where we're like, how was this published? Who conceptualized this? Who actualized it? How did this become a book? Then we've all read books that maybe were self-published and we're just scratching our heads looking at it like, wow, this is pure raw talent. And personally, I've been in a writer's group. I've read some excerpts and I'm just sitting there thinking, this is really good. Better than some of the published works that I've actually read. Now, excerpts are one thing. You do need to have a cohesive and strong story start to finish, but all that for another time.
Not today.
Going back to the agent and the query letter that I sent out, the piece of advice that I got was around my hook. Hooks are very difficult. Hooks are the first chapter of your book. They can be a lot of things, right? Like hooks can be you can have an elevator pitch or a one sentence hook, or hooks can mean chapter one. They can mean paragraph one. They can mean sentence one. A hook is anything that kind of catches a reader and gets them to keep reading. In this context, when I'm talking about a hook, it is chapter one. It's the reason for the agent that you're querying to continue reading. It's super hard to nail. I've gone through so many different chapter ones and iterations, variations for the books that I've tried to query, which is mainly the first book I self-published. It's The Colors of the Mayhem. And I actually completely rewrote chapter one for this very reason, just to try and make it a little bit more of a hook. And the feedback that I got from this agent, which I don't mind sharing, I'm just going to blot out their name, but it was specifically to include the main character in chapter one. And you might be sitting there thinking like, duh. But in a third person POV, it's not necessarily, to me, it wasn't so obvious. I just thought, oh, this is where the book started initially. Yes, kind of this character took over as perhaps the main character, even though really the story centers around three main characters. And where the dissonance was that in my query, I focused it around the one main character, his name's Shrike Taliskar. And then in the book, chapter one, it wasn't his POV initially. And so that's where I had to go back and rewrite and make the query and the chapter one match up. Otherwise, you're reading a query about a character, you think, that's intriguing. You start to read the excerpt and then it's like, wait a second, where's Shrike Taliskar? Where's his perspective on this? And there's a misalignment of expectations. So if you are querying and you're talking specifically about one character, because again, you're trying to simplify, you're trying to condense a massive story, right? Like my first book, I think it was around 90,000 words, and that was cutting it down from at least 120,000. Just huge swaths of the story that you're actually, I split it into two books, actually. So it was even to the point where I was like, well, I really have two stories here.
They were fruitful and multiplied.
Now, none of this is to say that I just went in there and randomly wrote a new chapter one. That's not at all what happened. It was very deliberate, okay? And it made sense. It flowed with the storyline. But I've been speaking this whole time and referring to it as chapter one. What the agent actually read was my prologue. And my prologue was from a different character's POV. And to be fair, it was not a main character. But prologues in general, if you've read The Wheel of Time, or I'm trying to think of other books that have prologues, let's go with the Stormlight Archives, right? There's typically a prologue, and typically I have no idea what's going on, and you kind of fill in the blanks later. I would say for new authors, be careful with that. Just speaking from personal experience, we don't really have the luxury of building up or having a chapter that it's cool. There's some good imagery and visualizations, but remember this, imagery, adjectives, those are great, but they require effort. They require the reader to really be thinking through, okay, what is he getting at with these descriptions or whatnot? So you can't overly rely on that. Now, on the flip side, you do need to show that you are capable of world building. That needs to be an integral part of what you're portraying in your first chapter, but it can't be the only thing that you're showing. And that's where a prologue can get tricky, because a lot of times it's set up and you're not exactly meant to know what's going on. That kind of comes later. And we take it for granted, but agents, they're all about time, right? Time is money.
Come on, time is money, money is power, power is pizza, pizza is knowledge. Let's go.
It's like job applications where an HR rep, they get 200 plus applications for any role, and it's just a matter of like you start looking for reasons to disqualify someone or just to narrow down that list, because there's so many qualified candidates. But a hook is something I've put a lot of thought into, and I'm crafting what I think is a pretty good one for my new book. Now, I thought that, then I had to rethink it, because after talking with some trusted sources, they were like, it doesn't really match up with the tone of the rest of the novel, and I kind of fell into that same trap again. Well, first off, let's talk about what a hook isn't necessarily. So it doesn't need to have shock value. It doesn't need to be overly intriguing or complex. And actually, strike that. I don't think anyone's walking around thinking a hook needs to be complex. But what I mean by that more so is it doesn't need to be some crazy twist, right? So when you're thinking about crafting a hook, you don't need to go to inception levels of thinking just to put together something that's like, whoa, and, blows the agents out of their mind. That doesn't have to happen. And the shock value can almost work against you if an agent's just like, What it's actually about is immediate engagement. And there's tons of different ways you can get to that point, but I will list a few specific ones. So first off is voice. This agent cited specifically that the voice of my character in the query letter wasn't matching up with who she was reading in the prologue. And that's because obviously they're different characters. But you do want to establish that you are capable of putting out a strong voice for a character. And it is best if your query letter, whoever you're focusing it around, also matches up with the character in chapter 1 or the prologue or whatever you end up sending. Now, I alluded to this before, but world building is huge, right? You need to show that you can create a frame within which to paint. You need to show that these voices aren't just in an echo chamber, but that there's this entire world you're able to construct. So while a lot of the visualization and adjectives, the descriptions are kind of in that second tier, they are very important. They're a simple way of showing that you know how to write, how to describe something, and how to build an intriguing world. World building can very much so play quarterback, right? If you create a scenario like Hunger Games or Divergent or Maze Runner, there's this question mark. And I realize I just cited a bunch of young adult books, but you get my point. Young adults, YA, anime, these types of genres tend to excel at world building. But I'll list one for you from good old high fantasy, and that would definitely be the first Stormlight book. It's called Way of Kings, and it is a very intriguing concept where it's like, hey, we have a bunch of these human armies and they're battling over these shattered plains, and it's kind of this continuous warfare, and they're trying to get these shards, and it goes on, but it's really interesting. It's like, okay, cool. So world building is very important. I don't quite want to put it in like second tier, but it shouldn't be the only thing that you're relying on. It can be a hook, but make sure that you're pairing it with voice. So world building, voice, a character doing something specific. So you don't want your character to just be meandering or walking or maybe making coffee. It's like, all right, these things can be cool, but what are they trying to accomplish? And so you want them to be doing something specific, something meaningful, and that in it of itself will function as a hook just because you are inherently building in stakes and tension into your first chapter. So kind of this symbiotic relationship with specificity is stakes and establishing tension. So that would be my last ingredient for a strong hook, is making sure that there is some level of stake or tension, some level of promise that makes the reader continue to read. So I've been rereading the Red Rising series by Pierce Brown. And in chapter 1, what happens? Well, the main character, Darrow, he is diving for helium. And we don't really know exactly what's going on, but he's a what's called a hell diver, and he's with a bunch of people, and they're in the mines, and there is a vein of helium. I think it's called 6 or 3 or something. And we know that if they hit it, they all go kaboom. So immediately there is tension established, there are stakes, and he hops out. He's risking these things called pit vipers. He gives a brief description of those. And there's all these different elements that make it really intriguing. And you're like, hey, is this guy Darrow going to survive chapter 1? What's going on here? And so that happens in chapter 1. And one thing that Red Rising does really, really well is just through each chapter, you do get this building tension. And so in 6 through 7, I looked it up, Io dies, and you're just like, whoa. And the story escalates from there. So that it's continually interweaving stakes. But all the way back in chapter 1, on kind of this micro level, you still have this specific task that Darrow, the main character who has a strong voice, is trying to accomplish in a very concrete world where there are rules, there are consequences, and you can pick up on all of that relatively quickly. So there you have it. If you want like a quintessential excellent chapter 1, just check out Red Rising. It's a phenomenal book series, and honestly, I think that chapter 1 really sums up what you need in a hook in order for an agent to open it up, start reading it, and go, you know what? I want to represent this person. Like, that is a really good story. Summing it all up, it's promise. What good old Brandon Sanderson has talked about in his lectures. You're establishing promise, and then you are sending the reader off on a fantastic journey through the pages of your book. So that is what I've learned from my personal experience. Be super curious if you have anything to add. Please drop a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you all.